Now, I don't want to disparage Dave, the poster here, so I'm just going to focus more on the message. And by the way, I used to make all these mistakes. I used to invest in a 401k plan until I learned, yeah, this is really a life deferral plan. It's deferring my life more so than it is a tax deferral plan. I want you to take a look at two related social media posts here that you're just not going to believe. The first one reads, Top Careers of Millionaires. We've got engineer, accountant, CPA, teacher, management, or attorney. Yeah, so what? You know, the interesting thing here is millionaire is positioned as something aspirational. A millionaire is common. That is not special. That's about as unspecial or ununique as these five professions are: engineer, accountant, teacher, management, and attorney. And then below the post here it says only 15% of millionaires had a career in which they held a senior leadership position role like vice president or the CEO of a company. Well, yeah, sure, okay. Those positions are less common. And then down below we have something else, hashtag debt-free community, something else that's not very aspirational or expansionary. Now, I don't want to disparage Dave, the poster here, so I'm just going to focus more on the message. First of all, a millionaire doesn't mean that someone has an income of $1 million a year. That would be pretty aspirational. That would be a pretty good salary. The definition of a millionaire is just simply the value of all of your accumulated assets minus all of your debts, the difference between those two things. If it's a positive number of $1 million or greater, there you go. That makes you a millionaire, but that sure doesn't make you wealthy, not even close. Inflation keeps denigrating the panache or the mystique of the millionaire, but somehow this word is just like a vestige. It keeps hanging around, and people think that's something really important to aim for. And I'm here to tell you why. Today, you can't aim for that. It's going to be woefully inadequate in your retirement. First of all, $1 million, even today, if there's no income associated with that and you've just got $1 million, what does that give you? Maybe 12 to 15 lean years? If you've worked all your life, worked hard, made sacrifices just to accumulate this in retirement, then you're going to have only 12 to 15 lean years? Let's go forward. Let's look at $1 million 30 years from now. At a 4% inflation rate, inflation's been coming in at 5 lately, but just at a 4% inflation rate, your $1 million would only have a purchasing power of $308,000 in 30 years. So what is that going to do for you? Give you 2 good years or a year and a half of good years or maybe 6 lean years or something like that? So inflation keeps wearing this down, but even today it's nothing special. And some of the comments below this image on the social media thread have things like, OMG, well, seeing a teacher on that list makes me very happy. And then they put in parentheses, teacher for 12 years here. Another poster says, most teachers in my area are smart and only spend what they have to. Kind of validating here that millionaire is something great or aspirational. I mean, spending only what you need to, that probably shows that you're making great sacrifices throughout your life. Most of these comments are like, what, really? A teacher's on this list? That's amazing. So really, it's quite popular in society to still think that a millionaire is aspirational. That's wrong. That's misdirected. And if that's your goal, by the time you get there, if you're a millionaire in retirement, it's going to be too late to do much of anything about it. So you need to aim at a higher trajectory here. I mean, what's next here? Are we going to hear from this person that, you ought to have your grandpa's plan of a 60%, 40% mix of stocks and bonds and put your money in a savings account and get your home paid off as fast as you can? Those are old, antiquated notions back when interest rates were 10 or 12%. Today, interest rates are lower than the rate of inflation, so you're losing prosperity if you don't borrow. Hey, go ahead and put a YouTube like on this if you would. That shows this video to more people. If you like what you're hearing, if you like understanding that a millionaire is not where you want to be today, this next image reads, 8 out of 10 there's that word again, millionaires invested in their company's 401k plan. Again, positioning millionaire as something aspirational, like being a 401k might get you there. And below that, it reads, building wealth requires patience and a plan. Okay, I agree with that. It doesn't happen overnight, I agree. And it doesn't happen from the latest hyped up get-rich-quick scheme. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Building durable wealth through income streams in real estate, that's something that might take 5 to 10 years. It does take some strategy and some patience. But you sure don't want to be in a 401k working something that your soul isn't even in for decades just to have an inadequate retirement. And I'm going to show you why that's going to be an inadequate retirement here in just a moment. And you know, with 401ks, you're typically invested in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, or ETFs. The rate of return isn't going to give you what you need to get to have an adequate retirement. If you're satisfied with a 10% long-term return from stocks, which is about the long-term average of the S&P 500, well, you need to subtract out inflation and emotion and taxes and fees and volatility. Well, just the first one of those, inflation, if that's 5%, you're at a 10% return minus 5% inflation. You're already at a 5% real return, and we haven't even subtracted out those other drags yet. The real rate of return from stocks over the long term after all those drags is 0. And you know, it's interesting. I do some collaborations with this really talented financial guy called Garrett Gunderson, and he often says, Keith, when you really look at this, you're being generous, saying the long-term rate of return from stocks, bonds, and mutual funds is as high as 0 because it's less than that. Now, if you do get your full employer match in your 401k, I think it could potentially be good to invest up only to that point, but there are even some detractors to that plan once you really look at this. You know, the best comment here about the 401ks and how you can become a millionaire, the best social media comment I saw here was, and then they die of old age shortly thereafter. Yeah, that's about right. You've made sacrifices all your life just to have a paltry retirement where you're barely getting by in most cases. You know, the 401k is a salary reduction plan. When you invest in something instead that's tax advantaged and produces income today, not in 10 or 20 or 30 years, but produces income today when you're young enough to enjoy it, that is what's called a salary increase plan, like investing in something that has a yield to it that pays you a monthly cash flow stream. Yeah, a salary reduction plan. In fact, the early name of the 401k when they rolled out in the 70s and really were born and came of age in the early 80s was a salary reduction plan. Yeah, that's what they were actually called, but they actually had to scrap the name salary reduction plan, which is principally what 401ks still do to you. They had to scrap the name just to foster participation. Now, wouldn't it be nice if I could just go back and talk to like the authority, like the inventor, like the guy that actually invented the 401k plan? Can you imagine if I could do that and start asking him some of these questions about 401ks and see if he would corroborate what I say? And then I could record that and play that for you. Wouldn't that be amazing? You know what? I already did that. It's on episode 197 of the Get Rich Education podcast. Yeah, I interviewed the actual inventor of the 401k plan. His name is Ted Benna, B-E-N-N-A. Now, Ted Benna and I did agree that 401ks are better than nothing for some people if some people would just squander that money away. To have it automatically deducted from their paycheck, yeah, that might actually be a benefit to an irresponsible person. But if you have a responsible financial bone in your body, which you do because you've been watching me for this long, you can understand that it's a salary reduction plan. Ted Benna corroborates that for me on the podcast. Ted Benna agreed that the plans are not serving people in the way that he intended when he originally set this up because so many fees and other things have come in and muddied up these plans, and people have become way too dependent on these plans as like a cornerstone or a key for their retirement, and it's been woefully inadequate for people. In fact, Ted Benna goes on to say that 401ks today should be blown up. Yeah, this is the guy that invented the plan. In fact, Ted Benna himself is a real estate investor himself today back in my original home state of Pennsylvania. You know, people used to have pensions, which are defined benefit plans, but these 401ks, which are defined contribution plans and principally based on the contributions that you put in there. You know, once 401ks got rolling in the 80s and the 90s, you know, that's when you really began to read all these stories about how Americans are woefully unprepared for retirement. So if everyone keeps getting the same outcome and everyone keeps getting this same result, why do they keep investing in these 401ks? Let's say you put $20,000 in a 401k, which is pretty close to today's contribution limits, or $19,500. If you put $20,000 in a 401k plan, you can kiss that goodbye for decades it doesn't produce any income for you now. Even worse, it reduces your income now, just in the hope that maybe you'll get that 20K back. We said it doesn't produce any return, any real return after inflation, emotion, taxes, fees, and volatility. So basically, you're trading away your hours and your energy when you're a younger person just to get that return to you when you're an older person. Well, how do you know that you're ever going to be able to enjoy it? And how do you know that you're still going to be able to surf at age 70 or do whatever you want to do? So you're trading away part of your youth for part of your elderly self. Is that really a trade worth making? Instead, what you could do is put $20,000 in not a salary reduction plan like a 401k, but in a salary increase plan. So there actually is still a little bit of delayed gratification there. If you make a $20,000 down payment on an income property, that starts paying you rental income today, not when you're older, and it has more tax advantages, and it's actually profiting you from inflation on the long-term fixed interest rate debt that you take out. So don't go for a salary reduction plan. Consider a salary increase plan. Don't go around and ask your boss for a raise. Give yourself a raise. That's what you can do with something that produces real income today. Chances are you are never going to be younger, healthier, or more alive than you are right now. You can improve your quality of life for yourself and your family today, not maybe someday. I mean, really, so your trajectory ought to steer more toward the deca-millionaire level, that $10 million net worth. The income that produces is more important, but being a deca-millionaire, $10 million, that is actually achievable for you when you understand how you can get returns from leverage, not just compound interest. If you get a 10% return from stocks, we talked about how that's typically whittled down to nothing after the 5 drags, but if you get just a 6% return from real estate, which is a long-term rate of appreciation, and you're leveraged 5-to-1 because you only have a 20% down payment on it, you have a 30% return from leveraged appreciation, and that's one of only 5 ways that you're paid from real estate. That's your trajectory that you need to take. That's how you can get there. You can't be conventional. You can either be conventional or you can be wealthy, and wealthy people don't make conventional and everyday decisions. It's interesting, something that 401k participants get rabid and almost ravenous about is the fact that, well, wait a second, I'm putting pre-tax dollars in here so they get to grow. But the thing that 401k participants don't talk about is the fact that in retirement, you're taxed at about double the rate that you are if you would have just invested those dollars outside of a 401k into mutual funds. Yeah, that's right, because in retirement, you're taxed at ordinary income tax rates, which are as high as 37%. The current administration has talked about raising those to 39.6%. But capital gains tax rates, long-term capital gains tax rates, are only about half that. So had you just invested outside the plan, you'd only be taxed at about half that rate. And some people say, well, wait, in retirement, my salary is going to be lower, so I wouldn't have to pay up to the 37% ordinary income tax rate. Maybe it would be down at 25 or 15 or something like that. Well, yeah, you're planning for poverty. You're planning to be poor. You're planning to only be a millionaire. You want to plan for prosperity here instead. You're double taxed this way in a 401k plan. In real estate, I have legally never paid capital gains tax in my life. There is a way to do that with a 1031 exchange. And by the way, I used to make all these mistakes. I used to think a 15-year mortgage was best out of my home until I learned that 30 makes more sense. I used to invest in a 401k plan until I learned, yeah, this is really a life deferral plan. It's deferring my life more so than it is a tax deferral plan. I used to make these same mistakes. Those people seeking millionaire status are just aiming way too low. In fact, 14 million households in America now have a millionaire living in it, so there's just nothing lofty or aspirational about a millionaire anymore. It's just not some impossibly big, dreamy number. All a million is 1,000 times 1,000. In fact, 1,000,000 grains of salt fit inside just a 1-gallon jug. If you had $1 million worth of $100 bills, that just makes a 22-pound dumbbell. It's not some impossibly huge number, and inflation's degrading it every single day.
I don't know if you've ever seen $100,000, except maybe in the movies. But I assure you, something gets lost in the translation.
$1,000,000 of net worth, that doesn't say anything about your income. And wealth, that's measured by the amount of time that your monthly passive income could support you without you having to work. So really, your wealth, if you don't have a lot of it, it's only 1 week. And your wealth, if you do have a good bit of it, might be defined as 7.5 years. How much your passive monthly income that recurs without your involvement, could support your lifestyle in that length of time. Measure wealth in time. So if a financial advisor tells you to invest in a 401k because it virtually guarantees that you'll be a millionaire, I think you're going to have a better understanding of why you're not interested. You really don't want to be a millionaire. You would rather be financially free. Ask your 401k plan advisor this, why would I wait until my 60s to create residual income when instead I could do that today? I don't want you to be a millionaire. I want you to be wealthy. I don't want you to have a 401k. I want you to not live below your means, but expand your means because you know you can. I'm Keith Weinhold. I like debunking these myths around being a millionaire. I'd appreciate you putting a like on this video. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much for stopping by.